Thank you, Presiding Officer. As a member of the Standards, Procedures and Public Appointments Committee, I would like to begin by thanking my fellow committee members, both current and previous, and also put on record my thanks to the clerks, researchers and all of those who took time to give evidence to the committee, both at committee and written evidence. I think it's important to state that this piece of work does not represent an end, but rather a beginning. And it had been my intention to say that, but particularly in relation to Rhoda Grant's comments, which I think were very well made. There was a balance that the committee had to strike between making recommendations and acknowledging the seriousness and gravity of this issue and the implications that some reforms could have. And that had to be balanced with a need to survey the views of all members in this Parliament. So while the report is not published as an interim report, it can be understood as a stimulus to further conversation and debate, and the report makes clear that the committee is willing to revisit these issues in light of this debate and in light of the work of the Joint Working Group. What the report does make is a series of recommendations which represent low-hanging fruit, policy changes that can be implemented in fairly short order. And I welcome the Joint Working Group's publication of the zero tolerance policy, and I believe that represents a start. And I think there's clearly support across the chamber for training, which, as has been highlighted previously, is important not just to change cultural attitudes, but to make sure that employers, MSPs as employers, are equipped with the skills required. I think a key issue that arose was the need for a simplified reporting process. The reporting landscape is incredibly complicated, and that is something that we heard time and again on the committee. And that is as a consequence of the various relationships that exist within this Parliament. There is MSP to MSP, MSP to their own member of staff, MSP to the member of staff of another MSP, MSP to member of staff employed by the group. And that is before we consider the relationships with staff employed by the corporate body. And clearly one of the barriers to reporting currently is this complicated landscape. And I think looking for a single point of contact, a single portal and a simplified process is absolutely essential. But one of the issues that arose from that was ultimately one of confidence. If someone took a case forward, could they be confident that it would result in action being taken? And that inevitably led to the question of an ultimate sanction, suspension, or recall. None of these options are without problems, but indeed none are without merit either. On the issue of recall, one of the issues that has already been touched upon is the potential for what is a very sensitive issue with issues of anonymity to become politicised and publicised. On the issue of a suspension, there's clearly, for purpose of investigation, there would be challenges there in perceptions of suspension, which a suspension in a normal employment scenario is to establish facts and to provide evidence for a report. Suspension in the context of our place of work could be interpreted as a form of punishment. And on the issue of an ultimate sanction, where this derives from is for acts of gross misconduct which currently fall short of the threshold of criminality. And that is something that we have to explore, but there's two comments I would like to make just in closing on that issue, Presiding Officer, of ultimate sanction. One is, this would be looking at gross misconduct, and any consideration of MSPs being able to be disqualified for gross misconduct cannot look at issues of sexual harassment in isolation. It would have to consider broader areas of gross misconduct. And the second issue I would like to highlight, as I understand the current arrangements, there is parity between what disqualifies one from being a candidate and what disqualifies one from being an MSP, namely custodial sentence in excess of a year or insolvency. Again, we would have to investigate that, because if there was a form of regulations where an MSP could be dismissed for acts of gross misconduct, Would we then want to prohibit people standing as candidates for Parliament who have been dismissed from workplaces for gross misconduct? So I think these are issues we have to explore. And the very final point I wish to make is, and I make this to Rhoda Grant, is this is not, as I said to begin, an end. It is a beginning. And I think it's very important that all members have an opportunity to contribute. And this is something I'm sure the committee will reflect upon.